We've just got some breaking news in from Buckingham Palace, folks. So this statement has just come in from Buckingham Palace, and I'll read it for you.
Camilla's voice cut through the room before anyone else could speak. "The palace is mine." The words landed with absolute certainty, as if the argument had already been won. Several senior royals froze. Advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Even King Charles remained silent, his expression impossible to read. Then Prince William stepped forward. Catherine never raised her voice. She simply placed a single sealed folder on the table. Everything changed. Within seconds, confidence turned into disbelief. Smiles vanished. The declaration that had sounded so final suddenly looked dangerously premature, because someone had been keeping a secret for years. And what William and Catherine revealed next threatened to erase everything Camilla believed she had secured. Before we continue, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. No one outside the palace expected the gathering to become anything more than another private family discussion. Rumors had circulated for weeks about disagreements over the monarchy's future, but few believed they had reached a breaking point. Behind closed doors, however, every conversation had become a contest over influence. King Charles's declining strength had forced difficult conversations about succession planning, constitutional responsibilities, and who would quietly shape the monarchy's future. Camilla believed she had earned that position. For years she had stood beside Charles through public criticism, private struggles, and endless scrutiny. She convinced herself that loyalty had purchased permanence. William saw something entirely different. He believed the crown could never become dependent on any single individual outside its constitutional role. That disagreement remained hidden until Camilla made it impossible to ignore. The room grew colder after her declaration. She outlined an ambitious vision that expanded her advisory role across nearly every major royal function. Private offices would report through newly created channels. Long-standing traditions would quietly disappear beneath modern restructuring. Several officials nodded cautiously. Others looked toward William. He said nothing. Instead, Catherine unlocked the folder. Inside rested a sealed envelope bearing a familiar royal crest. Princess Anne quietly stood. "I believe," she said calmly, "this belongs to everyone." Every eye turned toward the letter. Anne explained it had remained protected since the late Queen's final months. Not forgotten, protected. According to Anne, the Queen had anticipated future disagreements over unofficial influence within the institution. The letter was remarkably direct. Its message emphasized that the stability of the monarchy depended upon clearly defined constitutional responsibilities, not expanding personal authority through informal arrangements. No names appeared. None were necessary. The silence afterward spoke louder than any accusation. Camilla's expression barely changed, but William noticed her hands tighten. For the first time that afternoon, certainty disappeared from her face. Most believed that letter would settle the matter. Instead, it opened something far more dangerous. Less than 24 hours later, another unexpected visitor arrived, Prince Harry. No announcement. No carefully coordinated meeting. He walked through palace security carrying a leather case filled with documents. Nobody understood why. Family relationships had been strained for years. His appearance alone created shock. What he carried created something much worse. Harry claimed independent researchers had uncovered correspondence, suggesting that several palace advisors had quietly encouraged divisions within the family for years. Not to protect Charles, not to strengthen the monarchy, but to strengthen their own influence. The documents stopped short of proving deliberate conspiracy, yet they painted an uncomfortable picture. Private recommendations, internal memoranda, repeated attempts to isolate competing voices from sensitive decisions. Harry made one thing clear. "I didn't bring these because of revenge," he paused. "I brought them because everyone deserves the same truth." Charles studied every page himself. Hours passed. Nobody left. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Camilla insisted many documents lacked proper context. She wasn't entirely wrong. Some records appeared incomplete. Others relied on interpretations rather than direct proof. For one brief moment, even William wondered whether the growing storm had moved beyond evidence into dangerous speculation. Then another secret emerged. This time from people almost nobody expected. Princess Eugenie and Zara Tindall. The cousins quietly requested permission to speak. Neither sought headlines. Neither enjoyed palace politics, which made their confession impossible to dismiss. For months, they admitted, they had maintained confidential discussions with William and Catherine. Not against Camilla personally, against an administrative proposal quietly circulating among senior advisors. The proposal would have dramatically centralized ceremonial coordination, charitable oversight, and communication strategy under a structure many believed granted extraordinary informal authority to one office. Officially, it was presented as modernization. Privately, concerns grew that traditional checks inside the household would disappear. Eugenie explained she initially supported parts of the proposal, until she noticed respected staff members expressing fear rather than confidence. Zara described experienced officials suddenly requesting transfers. Neither woman accused Camilla of creating the proposal herself. Instead, they suggested ambitious advisors surrounding multiple senior figures had gradually built momentum for changes few fully understood. The revelation shifted everything. This was no longer one person's ambition. It had become a system feeding itself. Charles looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally. Years of family fractures suddenly seemed connected by invisible threads. Still, one final question remained unanswered. Who actually benefited? That answer arrived from the last people anyone expected: Sophie and Prince Edward. They requested an emergency family meeting before sunrise. Locked archives had recently been reviewed during broader administrative reforms. Among thousands of routine files sat forgotten records documenting internal recommendations stretching back several years. Some proposals had never reached Charles. Others had been rewritten before presentation. Meeting notes revealed advisors repeatedly steering discussions toward consolidating influence inside a small network of trusted officials. Some recommendations carried handwritten objections. Those objections mysteriously disappeared from later versions. Sophie laid every document across the table. Edward said only one sentence. The institution was slowly becoming smaller than the crown itself. Nobody argued. Camilla stared silently at the records. Then something unexpected happened. She didn't deny knowing many of the advisors. She admitted trusting them. She admitted believing they acted in the monarchy's best interests. For the first time, confidence gave way to vulnerability. "I thought," she whispered, "I thought protecting Charles meant trusting the people around him." It was not a confession of conspiracy. It was something more complicated, a realization. Sometimes influence grows quietly until even those closest to it no longer recognize its size. Charles finally stood. Every conversation stopped. He looked first toward Camilla, then Anne, Harry, Edward, Sophie, William, finally Catherine. No speeches, no theatrical outrage, only one decision. He announced a complete restructuring of royal household governance. Advisory responsibilities would be redistributed. Independent oversight would return. Informal authority would shrink dramatically. Future constitutional planning would operate through transparent institutional processes rather than personal networks. No exceptions. Then came the final announcement. Camilla would relinquish every additional privilege connected to those unofficial responsibilities. Not her dignity, not her place as Charles's wife, but every expanded influence accumulated over recent years disappeared in one sweeping decision. The room remained utterly silent. Camilla closed her eyes briefly, not in anger, in acceptance. Perhaps she understood before anyone else that fighting would only deepen the damage. William never celebrated. Neither did Catherine. There was no triumph, only relief that uncertainty had finally reached an ending. Anne quietly returned the late Queen's letter to its envelope. Harry gathered his documents without another word. Eugenie and Zara exchanged weary glances. Edward and Sophie left the records exactly where Charles could continue reading them alone. By evening, palace corridors felt strangely different, not because power had changed hands, because invisible lines had finally become visible. History often remembers dramatic announcements. It rarely remembers the quiet decisions that prevent institutions from collapsing beneath their own weight. This family had survived another storm, scarred, changed, perhaps wiser, but forever aware that the greatest threats rarely arrive shouting. Sometimes they arrive sounding completely certain, and sometimes the sentence, "The palace is mine," becomes the very moment everything begins slipping away. What do you think? Did William and Catherine make the right decision, or should Charles have handled the situation differently? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next royal drama.